Indiana football coach Curt Cignetti has just snitched on 6 schools, including Miami, for paying their rosters upwards of $40 million. Spoiler alert, it's BS.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about some potential surprises in Miami's starting lineups for the upcoming 2025 football season. I want to ask you guys on this episode, am I wrong on my, let's say, recent pessimism about where Miami stands with five-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell? Because another member of the media who I really respect is painting a much more optimistic picture than I am, and I hope he's right. I really do. Well, let's talk about this alleged $40 million roster that Miami has built. $40 million. So this accusation comes from Indiana coach Curt Cignetti, who quite frankly comes off as a whiny baby. I'll use baby instead of another possible word I could use. I consulted my thesaurus on how to clean this one up. So listen, and credit to Cignetti for the coaching job that he did last year. Indiana made a Cinderella run into the college football playoff that was not supposed to happen. So he got the most out of his sub $40 million roster, okay? Their lone regular season loss, and by, Big Ten standards, they had an easy schedule. They made the most of it, but they lost in the regular season to eventual champions, Ohio State. No shame in that. And they got, beaten soundly by Notre Dame in the first round of the college football playoff. And Cignetti is now out there painting this whole woe is me poverty program. How am I supposed to compete at little old Indiana when you've got 6 schools out there allegedly paying their rosters $40 million of NIL money? Now, Miami kind of caught a stray here, right? Because I don't think his motivation for coming out and talking about this was to slam Mario Cristobal and the Canes Connection Collective and whoever else he thinks is involved in this grand conspiracy of all this alleged money Miami is paying. I think his intention was, hey, of course we couldn't hang with Ohio State. And of course we couldn't hang with Notre Dame, because look at all this money that they're spending, whereas Indiana, we're being fiscally responsible. We're doing the right way. So the 6 programs that Cignetti cited as spending allegedly $40 million, Texas, Ohio State, who he lost to, Oregon, who are, known to be big spenders, Notre Dame, who they also lost to, Miami, and Texas Tech. Cignetti said, quote, I mean, if you want to be the best, you've got to be able to compete against the best. Right now, it's Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas Tech, because of the oil money. I think Notre Dame's up there pretty good now. Miami, too, of course, he said. Now, first, let me clarify something. While it is fair for me to say I don't know exactly how much, including Miami, because, again, this NIL money, they don't have to report on it, and Miami's a private institution. I can't say exactly how much Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oregon, et cetera, are paying out in NIL money, but it has been made very clear to me that Miami and none of the other teams mentioned are actually paying $40 million for their roster. Like in the case of Miami, I would be surprised if it was even half of that in terms of what the NIL budget is right now. And Ohio State, like it was widely reported by media outlets last year that Ohio State's roster was in the $20 to $25 million range. So how did Cignetti manage to bump that up an extra 15 to 20 million from last season? Like this is fantasy land. And I'm going to speak out against this because, again, first of all, Cignetti, he's complaining about the haves and the have-nots. Last I checked, Indiana is a large public university in one of the two most powerful conferences in college athletics. Instead of complaining about other teams spending so much more, allegedly, why don't you go to the Indiana athletic director, Indiana president or chancellor, talk to your NIL collectives and say, guys, why can't we bump up our spending a little bit? Instead, you're complaining about the schools who you think are spending way more than you. That's why he comes off sounding like a whiny baby. I would love it if Miami really had $40 million to spend on NIL. I think that would be fantastic. But Cignetti comes off here as someone who can just basically make up whatever number he wants to and roll with it in the media. Oh, I heard. I mean, it sounds like he got his figures from Florida State message boards. Because if you go on one of those today, I read Miami might be spending $140 million, not $40 million on their upcoming roster. So it comes off really sounding petty and childish, in my opinion. And yeah, even though those numbers, again, aren't public record, I can say very confidently, and you can quote me on this, Miami is not spending $40 million or anywhere close to that in NIL money for their roster. And I would imagine that's even the case for Ohio State and Oregon, who are known as two of the biggest spenders out there. Texas, Texas Tech, Notre Dame, none of them are spending probably anywhere close to $40 million. I mean, he might want to throw out a shout out to LSU because I know they've been spending a lot on NIL recently. I don't think they're in the $40 million range. And, I think the hope for Cignetti would be, assuming the NCAA versus House settlement gets passed, that they're going to basically really scrutinize the third-party NIL deals, that schools would have their $20.5 million, which doesn't all go to football, by the way, but the $20.5 million revenue sharing budget, and then the NIL deals from third parties moving forward would supposedly have to come for legitimate business reasons, right? That you can't just be collectives raising money for paying player salaries, that it would have to be legitimate advertising. I'm working for this company and that company. We'll see if that actually comes to pass, but there's going to be a lot more scrutiny supposedly coming to NIL deals in the future. In the meantime, the other thing I'll say is, and listen, Miami obviously in a really good NIL situation. They're not spending $40 million, but Miami has done a really good and competitive job, producing, raising, and spending NIL money. There's nothing illegal about it. They are doing absolutely nothing wrong, nor any of the other 5+ schools that Cignetti mentioned. So if you're doing that within the rules and you're able to raise that kind of money, let's go. We got a lot more coming up on this episode. Have I painted too much of a pessimistic picture in the recruitment of Jackson Cantwell? We're exactly 1 week away from Cantwell's announcement. 6'7.5", 300+ pound, top player, top offensive tackle in the class is going to be choosing on May 13th between Georgia, Miami, Oregon, and Ohio State. Is Miami in a better situation than I've been leading on? You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Friends, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Same thing with the Stanley Cup playoffs, guys. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. Before tip-off and live, watch player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Guys, we've been riding the Florida Panthers hot throughout these Stanley Cup playoffs, and I cannot wait to see who scores goals in that upcoming game 2 as the Panthers look to respond from being down 0-1. Yeah, if you had the New York Knicks upsetting Boston in game 1 the other night, you won big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we did an extra bonus episode on Jackson Cantwell last night because of what I refer to as a possible domino. And that was Georgia, who's considered to be the trending favorite right now for Cantwell. Georgia, yesterday afternoon, evening, landed a big verbal commitment from the top quarterback in the class of 2026, Jared Curtis. Now, obviously, on the surface, there's the idea that maybe the top offensive tackle in the class would want to block and pair up with the top quarterback in the class. But it's not just that. Like Cantwell has, engaged in Jared Curtis's social media, tagged him in an Instagram post and reposted something recently. So, I hope I'm reading too much into that. But with recent social media links between those two players, there is an idea, and I'm not the only one who feels this way, that, the Jared Curtis decision to UGA, he was actually deciding between UGA and Oregon, which are, two of Cantwell's finalists, that him deciding to go to Georgia might have an impact on Cantwell's decision. But it's not just that. Cantwell has the upcoming May 10th visit to Georgia. It's coming up in a few days before he makes his final decision. And he says it's going to be a final decision. I know National Signing Day is not till December, but he claims after he picks his school in a week, he's going to shut his recruitment down. And so on May 13th, he's going to decide between Georgia, Oregon, Miami, and Ohio State. It seems like Georgia, Oregon, and Miami have been ahead of the Buckeyes. He's made a lot more trips and been involved more with the first three schools, but Ohio State is considered to be in the mix. And, the trends in recent weeks, at least on the surface, it feels like this thing is going a little bit farther away from Miami. You rewind to about 3 weeks ago, around the time of Miami's spring game. There was a lot of buzz that Cantwell, this was mid-April, was about to drop a decision. And at that time, Miami had most, if not all, of the momentum, right? And then he pushed back a little bit and announced an April 30th decision and an extra official visit to Ohio State. That Ohio State felt like they had momentum and Miami was losing it, right? Or not, sorry, Oregon, not Ohio State. The visit to Oregon before the April 30th announcement, an official visit there, which he made. But then he pushed back to, okay, now I'm going to decide May 13th with an unofficial visit to Georgia happening a couple of days before my announcement. And since that time, UGA has had all the momentum. So every time the timeline has elongated, it kind of feels as though maybe he was leaning to Miami and now he's looking for reasons not to commit to Miami. That's been the perception, okay? And I've been, riding that wave of perception, keeping in mind that throughout the process, I have not at any time doubted that Miami is putting their best foot forward in his recruitment and doing all that they can to show Jackson Cantwell, this is the spot for you. We have a program on the rise. We have proven offensive line development because of what Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal do together when it comes to developing offensive line, how O-line centric Miami's program is, other things like how beautiful the campus is and how, people seem to enjoy living in South Florida. And Cantwell admitted, he talked to Kane Sport after Alex Mirabal went in home with Cantwell a couple days ago on Sunday. And he talked to canesport.com after that and said, nobody's recruiting him harder than Miami. Nobody's kept in more constant contact. He hears every day from Cristobal and every day from Mirabal that Miami is working the hardest in his recruitment. So I believe Miami is absolutely putting their best foot forward, but I've also felt that maybe things are trending a little bit farther away from Miami than I'd hoped over the past few weeks. But I hope to be wrong on this one, and I cannot wait to potentially be proven wrong because you guys also know I have a lot of respect for the crew at canesinsight.com. D-Money, Peter Ariz, they've both been on this show before. I have a lot of respect for what they do and their, connections to everything Miami. And, for what it's worth, D-Money from Canes Insight is painting a much more optimistic picture, like still pointing out that for Jackson, he has emphasized the most important criteria for his decision is proven offensive line development. And he said it that with the teams that are still left in the mix for him, his finalists, Miami is the only one of those who essentially has two offensive line coaches, including the head coach, who runs an offensive line centric program, that is completely unique to Miami compared to the other programs that he's considering. Other people have brought up, Jackson is an elite track and field star, a thrower, throws the javelin, the shot put, anything the discus, anything you pick up and throw. Cantwell is like almost Olympic level at doing those things. In fact, both of his parents were track and field Olympians, right? So some people have brought up, hey, maybe Miami not having as elite of a track program as Oregon, for example. Oregon's track program is top notch. I don't know much about Georgia's track and field. They might be really good for all I know, but some people have said, hey, maybe the track and field thing, because Miami's got like a good program, but not an elite program, might be a disadvantage. And, D Money has pointed out that Cantwell's going to go and set records no matter which track program he's a part of, that's not as big of a part of his football decision, that his football decision is based entirely on football. So, when seeing and hearing what D has to say about where Miami is with Cantwell, still feeling like Miami's in a really good spot and that there's optimism internally for Miami to actually get this one over the finish line, it makes me feel a little bit better. And it certainly makes me hope that I am wrong to have some of these negative vibes on Jackson Cantwell. So you guys tell me, are you still all about Miami for this recruitment? Is he going to be a Cane, or is he going to be a Dog, or is he going to be a Duck, or is he going to be a Buckeye? I mean, I guess if Curt Cignetti was right about, Miami and Ohio State spending $40 million plus, maybe Miami's got like a $20 million offer for Cantwell coming up. And, Cantwell, I don't necessarily think that this helps Miami, but he's represented by Drew Rosenhaus. That's his NIL agency, Rosenhaus Sports, which is a Miami-based operation, and Drew is a Miami guy. So some people have wondered, is that something that may favor Miami? I think no matter what, Drew is going to probably steer him to the best deal, whether that's Miami or otherwise. But it's ultimately Cantwell's decision to make, not Drew Rosenhaus's decision. So hopefully I've been painting an overly pessimistic picture on this one. But with Cantwell, mentioned Alex Mirabal just paid a visit to him in Nixa, Missouri, his hometown. Mirabal also, when he got back to South Florida, he paid a school visit to friend of the show, interior offensive lineman Ryan Moret. Mirabal went to visit. I think he visited him at Southridge, Moret's high school. And it's when I saw that, I smiled, because one of our listeners just asked us the other day, like, what's going on? Anything new with Ryan Moret, who's, going to be taking some visits this summer around the country? I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've talked to Ryan before on the show. He absolutely loves Miami, and I would consider Miami to be the favorite there until proven otherwise. And, when Moret was on with us about a month and a half ago, he also said that, Alex Mirabal had told him, that we being Miami would have no problem with you not enrolling early, right? Not being able to enroll next January, that if he commits to Miami, they would allow him to finish out his full senior season at Southridge, because the reason why Moret wants to do that is he is an elite state champion high school heavyweight wrestler, and wrestling season, as you know, goes deep into March. So Moret, wants to be part of his final wrestling season to not only win another, individual state championship, but to help his team win a state championship. And, Mirabal and Cristobal are willing to allow him, because obviously for football reasons, you prefer when your recruits enroll early so they can start practicing in January and go through spring and all that. But apparently they would make an exception for Moret not to have to do that. And I think that was a cool thing to know. And another school visit that happened over the weekend was tight ends coach Cody Woodall. He went out to Brunswick, Georgia to visit 6'5", 300-pound tight end Jose Kent, Superman. His decision is scheduled for July 12th. And I know Miami's been very involved in Kent's recruitment. I mean, when you're talking about a physical freak like that, who's 300 pounds, but actually runs like a 230-pound tight end, I mean, Jose Kent is an absolutely special talent. And, we're going to see how this one keeps trending over about the next 2 months before he offers his verbal commitment. But this is a player that I would absolutely love Miami to land. Miami also, by the way, another visit that happened was, I think it was Matt Merritt, the running backs coach, went out to Colquitt County, Georgia, to visit top 24/7 running back Jay Lamar, who has a lot of connections to Miami. Colquitt County, same high school that Nye Carr went to. In fact, Lamar, I'm not familiar with the family tree, but Lamar referred to Nye Carr as his cousin, and he also referred to Kamal Bonner, linebacker who just transferred from NC State to Miami, also went to Colquitt County High School in Georgia. He also referred to Kamal Bonner as his cousin. So we're getting the entire family tree potentially together. Like Jay Lamar, Miami already has a running back commitment from Javian Mallory, as we know, and Miami is heavily involved in the recruitment of Derek Cooper, who's an athlete who, I guess consider him primarily a running back, but Cooper can line up in like 10 different positions. He's, potentially another Travis Hunter type at the college level. But Jay Lamar is another one that Miami is heavily involved with, and he's got apparently family connections in addition to high school connections to Miami's roster. So you love to hear that. How about potential surprises in Miami's starting lineup next year? We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about really an absolute tragic, sad, disgusting story involving a former Miami Hurricanes football player. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new Locked On Canes. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and so much more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Guys, instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business effectively. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with a top talent to grow your business today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. For your next listen, make sure you check out The Portal. We had Brian Smith, who hosts The Portal. We had him on yesterday talking all things transfer portal and recruiting in terms of Miami. Make sure you check out his podcast, The Portal, on the Locked On Network, available free wherever you get your pods and available free on YouTube. And, Brian, for what it's worth, and he's covered Jackson Cantwell's recruitment very closely, and he's scouted and talked to Cantwell in person before. And like he mentioned, he feels like this thing is wide open, right? So again, I know that Steve Wiltfong and some others have really tried to paint Georgia in the light of being like the recent leader. But Smith mentioned to us, we really don't know for sure yet. And, there are some like D Money from Canes Insight who cover Miami who are painting a more optimistic picture for Miami than others have in recent weeks. So fingers crossed that Miami can get this one over the finish line, because, of course, Miami, it did not land Kenai Pepe, the 5-star offensive tackle who chose USC. That was, someone who had been a top target for the Hurricanes. And, you'd hate to miss out on Cantwell. But, Miami has done well already with some offensive tackles like Joel Irvin and Ben Congdon, who are very good players. And there's a long way to go between now and National Signing Day. But again, when you've got 2 5-star offensive tackles in your sights, you would hate to miss out on both of them, okay? Here's something I've been thinking about since I saw this a couple days ago. Another media member in Miami who I respect, Gary Ferman, publisher at canesport.com, mentioned that his projected starters at receiver for Miami this coming year, his 3 projected starters, outside guys, slot, 2 of the 3 really surprised me that he's got, as most of us do, JoJo Trader heading into his second year as a starter. I co-sign on that 100%. Still got to get through fall camp, but JoJo looks tremendous. But then he's also got true freshman Joshua Moore starting on the outside, and Malachi Toney starting in the slot. So he's going with the youth movement, okay? Trader heading into his second year with limited experience. Didn't play a whole lot last year. Josh Moore, fresh out of high school, but he's got the size at 6'5", 215 plus. And Malachi Toney, true freshman. And I'll say it, Toney was electrifying in spring football. And to me, Malachi Toney was probably the standout offensive player in the spring game. So I'm not even going to say from a football standpoint, this surprises me, because Josh Moore is the type of player who can really be physical and make contested catches. Even though he's so young, he's so big, he's so physically mature, and he looked very good at times in spring football. But it did surprise me a little bit, the idea that more experienced guys like CJ Daniels wouldn't win a starting job, which is kind of the one that I've favored to be a starter, opposite JoJo Trader. Miami just brought in a couple of other experienced guys. Keelan Marion, who can play outside or slot, has more of the slot body type, but he can play on the outside. Now, I expect Marion, no matter what role he plays at receiver, I think Keelan Marion is going to be Miami's starting kickoff returner, because he is elite at that. And Tony Johnson from Cincinnati, who has a ton of experience last year with the Bearcats and previously with FAU, where he started his career playing in the slot, not to mention Nathaniel Ray Joseph, already on the roster as a slot guy heading into his third year. So I was, and again, it'd be cool if he's right. Like, if Miami ends up having if Miami ends up having Malachi Toney, Joshua Moore, and JoJo Trader as their three starting receivers, like, that would tell you these young guys have grabbed their opportunities and stood out even above some older players, with some of those older players, I'm sure, having big time rotational roles. So I would have no problem with that. It would surprise me a little bit. And then if it does pan out that way, if it does pan out where, Miami's three starting receivers, and again, you would have rotational roles for older players, but if you do have three starting receivers, second year guys, first year, gosh, I hope they're ready for Notre Dame. Because again, Miami starts out there, some years, your first game of the season, last year Miami played Florida to open up, it ended up being an easy game. Man, those Gators did not show up for that one. So it ended up being a warm-up game. But, theoretically, some years you open up with FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, so you get that sort of warm-up game before you play tougher opposition. Miami opens up their season against national runners-up from last year. They lost some players, and they lost Al Golden, their defensive coordinator, but Notre Dame is tremendously talented with a great defense and great defensive backs heading into this year. So if Miami does end up with a youth movement at receiver to open up the season, hopefully they are ready and they've got their chemistry with Carson Beck, and then hopefully those experienced guys like Tony Johnson, Keelan Marion, Ray Joseph, and CJ Daniels play, pretty significant rotational roles, so that their experience can help the younger guys. And thankfully it's a home game. Like, if you had to go into South Bend to open up the season, that'd be a lot tougher on paper. At least you're going to be in the friendly confines of Hard Rock Stadium. But I thought that was really interesting. So if you guys have any other bold takes on possible surprise starting lineup spots, drop them in the comments below. I want to expand on this a little bit more. We were scheduled, of course, to have the truth teller with us today. The truth teller, Bruce Warner, is going to join us tomorrow. So I was worried about him, because it was time to record and he was nowhere to be found. And I'm like, I hope Bruce is okay. I hope nothing happened. Like, right after I started recording this, he notified me that he fell asleep. So, he's a 70-some-year-old man. It happens. He nodded off watching Matlock or Murder, She Wrote. He hit that snooze button one too many times, but we are going to track him down for tomorrow, Wednesday. We're going to have a Truth Teller Wednesday with Bruce here on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.